Hey there. So if you're here to study Verbo Vitamina, we're just going to do Despedir and Invertir. So I'm going to ignore Obtener because we did Montaner last semester. So what I like to start with, grabbing markers, what I like to start with is identifying the problems that both verbs have, and they do have similarities, so it's easier to compare them. So starting with Invertir. First of all, you should know what kind of sim changer it is. So it's E to IE, and Despedir is the E to I one. The nice thing about Despedir is that Despedir is always E to I no matter what. It's never E to IE, but Invertir is normally E to IE, and three exceptions. There are three exceptions when it's E to I. Okay, so let's start with the yo form of Invertir. I like to start with the yo form because the yo form is going to affect all of our subjunctive forms, like all of our opposite endings. So the yo form, since it's E to IE and it's in the boot, would be invierto, which means when we're thinking of our commands, we're going to start with invierto, take off the O, opposite ending, whatever. So it's good to make sure that you know that the yo form is invierto. Sorry, I have terrible lighting, so bear with me here. Preterito has two exceptions. So the preterito, remember, since it's an IR verb, all of the endings start with the letter I. And what I mean by that is like your chart is iste, eo, emos, ieron. So the two that have a problem are the bottom two, so el, ea, and eos. And the problem is that instead of being E to IE, they're E to I instead. Um, so we have invirtio and invirtieron. So that E right there changed to an I. And then the other two times where it goes E to I is the ing form. The ing form is ando, yendo, remember? And so it goes to invirtiendo, not invertiendo. And then finally, the last sort of exception is the let's form. So remember, you form the let's form by going yo form, take off the O, opposite. But this does not follow the rule because the yo form, like we established, is invierto, but the let's form, if you can read that, is invirtamos. So this I should be IE if we followed the rule, but instead it's just an I. So these three right here are your three exceptions when it goes E to I. So you're going to need to know those three exceptions. Now, the nice thing is that despedir is problematic in the same spots. So it's E to I all the time. And the yo form, therefore, is despido, which means that every time it's opposite, it would be despida, despidas, no despida, and so forth. The preterite is problematic in the same two spots. So it's iste, eo, emos, ieron, but the bottom two stem change from an E to an I, because remember, it's always E to I. So those bottom two are despidio and despidieron. So that I and that I. And then the ing, just like we just did with invertir, also does an E to I here. So it's despidiendo, just like invirtiendo. I did not include the let's because when we do commands in just 1 second, you'll see that the let's form is actually correct. So that is not a problem with this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and so you know that your Verbo Vitamina is not in order. And if you have been studying well all year, it shouldn't matter that it's not in order, but it is going to be a little bit different to get used to. But just because it's not in order doesn't mean you cannot organize the forms in your brain. So the commands aren't together anymore, but we should still understand how to form all 5 commands regardless of whether they're together or apart. So I'm just going to focus on one verb because I feel like that's easier. So I'm going to do invertir in the 5 command forms. So remember, we have +2. I'm going to do them out of order. So I'm going to do +2, let's, negative usted, positive usted, and -2. Okay, so we have 5 commands. Keep in mind that out of the 5 commands, 4 of them are opposite ending. Is that better? That's sort of better. Okay, 4 of them are opposite ending. So the only one that is not opposite ending is the +2. So all of these 4 are going to be opposite. So that means we have to start in the O form. So if we're thinking of invertir, okay, we're going to start with +2. So remember, +2 is the LA form. So the LA form is inside of the boot, which means no, we're not going to use opposite ending, but yes, it is going to have a stem change. So think about that one, the +2, and I'll show you all at the end. The let's form of invertir is one of those 3 exceptions we talked about. So hopefully you have it written down. Those 3 exceptions we talked about because it does not do E to IE, it does E to I instead, but it still does opposite ending. The next one we wrote down is negative usted. So remember, all the rest are opposite. We know that, but we always start in yo form. So even though the let's command does not follow the rule, that does not mean that we stop following the rule. So the rest of your commands that we have left, yo form, take off the O, opposite. So we're going to do the negative usted, and remember the negative usted and the positive usted, there's no difference. And then the -2, just add an S. So in the end, if you're still working, pause me, but in the end, the +2, which should be a normal ending, so that's invierte, but there is a stem change because it's in the boot. Remember, this is the exception. This is not following the rule. So instead of being inviertamos, it's invirtamos. And then the rest of them, we keep following the rule, even though this one breaks it. So we go yo form, take off the O, opposite ending. So negative usted is no invierta, so stem change and a. Positive usted, just take off the no. And then the -2, just add an S. So no inviertas. Okay. So again, exception to the rule on that guy. So let's now do the commands for despedir, and then we'll try some different forms, different tips and forms, hopefully no more than 15 minutes. So let's do despedir in a different order. So I'm going to start with positive usted, -2, let's, negative usted, and +2. Okay, so we're doing despedir. So we're like fire, don't fire, let's fire, don't fire, and fire. So on your Verbo Vitamina, it will still say out to the side like usted command, to command. So don't worry about that. But the positive usted is opposite because it's not our friend. It's not positivo too. So we're going to go yo form, drop the O. So keep in mind what is the stem change for despedir. So what's the yo form? Take off the O, do opposite. For the negativo 2, the -2, simply do the opposite, but with an S. For the let's command, this is not an exception to the rule, so you still follow the rule and you do yo form, take off the O, opposite for nosotros. For the negative usted, it's the same as our positive usted. And for the +2, normal ending. Okay, so in total, pause me if you need to. In total, we have despida, no despidas, despidamos, no despida, and despide. Keep in mind your only normal ending is +2, so all the rest have an A for the end, and they are all E to I's. There's not any different kind of stem change there. Okay, so some other tips and forms as you're studying. So keep in mind on your Verbo Vitamina, we have 3 forms that have an H word, as I like to call them, but we should call them helping verbs. So we have 3 of those. We learned them all last semester, and we're going to add 2 more eventually. But right now we just have 3. So think to yourself, okay, what are those 3? So the first kind we learned was I have. So I have fired, for example. So when there's an H word, you also need an H word because in English, the helping verb translates to a helping verb in Spanish. So you need an H word first, but then your second word, remember the fired is the auto-edo form because it's like the ed ending. So I just wrote I have fired. The second helping verb that we learned was had. So I'm going to write, you had invested. So you had invested. So remember, we're doing the you had and then the invested, which is the auto-ito form. And no, there's no problem with the auto-ito form. And then the third one that we learned was the one that has a trigger. So it is good that you have obtained, for example. So it is good that. So you need the subjunctive helping verb, and then you need the auto-ito of obtained. Okay, so in the end, on your Verbo Vitamina, you will have these three helping verbs. So I have fired is a despedido. You had invested. So habías is our had. Invested, invertido, because that's the auto-ito. And then this one is the triggered one. Hayas, you have obtenido. So you notice that they're all ito because they're all ER and IR verbs, so we don't have any autos. Okay, you are going to need to use auto-ito 4 times because you have 3 right there. And the last one, how would you say the money is invested? So the money is invested. Since we need the word is and the word invested, you know you have to write down 2 things. So you need to write down the word for is and the word for invested. And then if I changed it to the employees, more than one, we'll call them all masculine, the employees are fired. You can't just write está this time. And since more than one person is fired, think about what you're going to have to add to the end of your ito. So we wrote, the money is invested, the employees are fired, and they're all boys. So we would end up with está for the money is invested, invertido. The employees, because there's more than one, we would write están. And because there's more than one employee, we would write despedidos because we're describing the employees. So therefore, we have to match the number of employees. Okay, so we're going to use auto-ito 4 times. Okay, after that, some other forms that we should pay attention to. So our favorite one should be the going to. So remember, the going to has 3 parts. Voy a obtener, I'm going to obtain. But now we have the future version of that, which is going to be brand new because we just introduced it. So instead of writing, so voy a obtener is I'm going to obtain. And I picked obtener for a reason. Because if we want to write I will obtain, which is our new grammar, this is the one that's irregular. So instead of writing voy a obtener, now I'm going to write the yo form in that new future tense. And remember, the future tense is the whole verb plus the ending, but this is irregular. So if you remember from class, we have voy a obtener is I'm going to, the easier one, the one we've known. And then obtendré is the new I will obtain. The other 2 verbs are not irregular in the future, so they're nice and easy. You just have to remember your chart. And so remember, we talked about the chart in class recently, as, a, amos, an. All of them have accents except for amos. So there's no problem with the other 2. So like you will invest is just invertir, as. He will fire, despedir, a. The last few forms that we haven't talked about, so the ing form, remember the ing form is the other form that has 2 parts. So for example, she is obtaining, we need the she is, and we need the obtaining. A lot of students spell obtaining wrong, so keep in mind that you just take off the ending, so you're left with obten, and then you add the iendo. Okay, so we have is está obteniendo. The other 2 we already practiced because they are irregular, because they are invirtiendo and despediendo. And then finally, one other form would be subjunctive. But technically, we've already done that because we did the commands. So it's good that you invest, for example. Okay, it's good that you invest. Now, we know that that answer has 1 word in it because it's you invest. But there's going to be another one on the quiz that also has a trigger. It's good that you have invested. Okay, but we know that one has 2 words because we're saying you have invested. So it's good that you invest is just the opposite, the subjunctive of the to form. So it's in the boot. So we would say es bueno que inviertas, because that's the opposite. We triggered the opposite of the to form. But if I said es bueno que you have invested, that would be the helping word we practiced a second ago, which is hayas invertido. The ones that I always skip are from the very beginning. So I think I take them for granted. So just real quick to wrap up, just thinking about those first few, the present and the past. So the present tense, right, for all three, they all have boot problems, including obtener, because obtener has the E to IE as well. So for example, the to form of despedir, so you fire, what would that be? And what would the ellos form of invertir be? Both in the boot. What kind of stem changer are they? And they should have normal endings because we're just doing the present tense. So you fire would be despides, and they invest is invierten. Okay, make sure we're spelling invierten right, because a lot of people like to change this R, which that is a terrible R, but that's an R. So a lot of people misspell that. So just be careful there. So that's the present tense, paying attention to the yo form and the boot. And then finally, the imperfect. The imperfect is the easy one because remember, the imperfect means I used to obtain. He used to fire because it's repeated. And remember, the imperfect is the aba ia, but there is no aba because none of these are AR verbs. So literally, all of them are normal. There is no problem. You just simply take off the ending and add ia. Okay, so for example, obtenia, invertia, despedia. So no problem, no stem change. So to sum up, really the way I like to practice is kind of the order that I did. Identify problems. Can I do the commands? And let me just play with some other forms out of order. You have your small practice sheets and you've got the Quizlet. And I did make a Quizlet that's like smaller. So therefore you don't have to study like 300 forms. It just focuses on making sure all of them are covered. That should do it. It's really just going to take some time just to get them in your brain, practice out of order. And yeah, so if you have any questions in class, I think I covered all the forms. Let me know. And may the odds be in your favor. Have a good night.